They smiled in my face while plotting behind my back. I built the entire system they now parade as their own line by line, night after night. But they forgot one thing: the code still remembers who wrote it. I've never been the loudest voice in the room. While others fought to speak over each other in meetings, I kept my head down and typed. For me, code always made more sense than conversation. Code never lied. It didn't pretend. People did. When I joined Viron Labs, it wasn't a glamorous job. A small tech startup, rough edges, barely funded, with more ambition than structure. But something about the rawness of it called to me. I wasn't looking for fame or flashy titles. I just wanted to build something real, something that worked. I remember the first time I saw the backend they were using. It was a mess, patched together with third-party plugins and outdated APIs. No system, no logic. I couldn't believe they were even in beta. So I stayed late every night. I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't trying to prove a point or win favors. I just started rebuilding it from scratch. My own architecture, clean, fast, scalable, something I could be proud of. I worked out of habit, out of obsession, because when an idea gets its claws in you, it doesn't let go. The days blurred, coffee-stained notebooks, whiteboard diagrams in my apartment, sleepless nights, blinking cursor, headphones tight around my ears while the world outside fell away. Eventually, it all came together, a lightweight framework I called Pulse. It was intuitive, flexible, and bulletproof. Every line of code was mine. Every solution was hard-earned. At work, I kept updating the internal tools bit by bit, replacing broken components with my own. I never asked for permission. No one really noticed until things started to just work. Suddenly, pages loaded faster, reports stopped crashing, bugs vanished. My manager, Rishi, started showing off the improvements during investor demos. "We've overhauled the infrastructure," he'd say, grinning like he'd done it himself. I stood at the back of the room, clapping like everyone else. Still, I didn't care, not yet. I wasn't after applause. I just loved the feeling of creating something that made sense. But in the silence, I started noticing things. Rishi would glance at my screen more often. Slack channels were created without me. I'd walk into conversations that stopped mid-sentence. Something was shifting. I didn't know what yet. But I felt it, like cold air creeping in under a locked door. It was around that time I realized how far along Pulse had come. What started as a late-night obsession had grown into a complete product, a full back-end framework that could power just about any SaaS application. I had rewritten nearly every internal service Viron Labs depended on. Authentication, data pipelines, reporting dashboards, all of it. No one else touched the core logic, not once. Sure, others added minor UI changes or fixed typos in documentation, but the real foundation, that was mine. And yet at every team meeting, it was like Pulse had materialized out of thin air. Rishi spoke about our improvements, how the team had turned things around. He even gave Rahul, one of the junior devs, a shout-out for a performance boost I had spent a weekend writing. It stung a little, but I told myself it didn't matter. I had the commits, the logs. Every version, every timestamp, every pull request was under my name. I figured that was enough. Still, a strange tension started to build. The more stable and powerful the system became, the more I noticed people distancing themselves from me. It wasn't overt, just odd. I'd be left off calendar invites. Tasks I used to own were reassigned. My Slack messages would go unanswered for hours, sometimes all day. And then came the meeting with the investors. Rishi asked me to prepare a live demo. He said I'd be supporting him during the call. I didn't mind. I even cleaned up the staging environment and added a few small flourishes to make it shine. We went live. Rishi presented the entire product like it was his baby. He called it a team-driven rebuild. Not once did he say my name. I sat there off camera, running the commands, executing endpoints as he narrated the magic of our collective engineering brilliance. My chest felt tight, but I kept a straight face. I reminded myself I wasn't here for credit. I was here to build. I was here for the code. But that night I couldn't sleep. The words kept bouncing around in my head. Our rebuild, collaborative architecture, cross-functional effort. I opened the repo again, staring at the header I'd written months ago. CPP. Copy edit. Pulse framework built by R.F. Verma. And that's when a thought crept in, quiet but sharp. What if they were trying to take it from me? After that investor demo, something in me changed. I couldn't ignore it anymore, the way they acted like I was invisible unless something broke. And even then, it was only to ask if I'd checked my part again. I tried to push the thoughts away. Maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was just tired, but the signs became impossible to ignore. One morning I logged in and saw that several files in Pulse had been edited overnight. Not by me, not minor changes either, whole modules rewritten in clumsy, inefficient code. I checked the commit history. The edits had Rishi's name on them, though it was clear he had no idea what he was doing. Functions I had carefully tuned were butchered. One of the queries that used to run in milliseconds now took 20 seconds. I rolled back the changes and left a polite comment on the commit. Hey Rishi, I think this may have affected performance. Reverted for now, happy to discuss. No response, not in Git, not in Slack, nothing. Later that day, the front-end team reported a bug on production. Something with the analytics endpoint. I knew the issue immediately. It came from Rishi's changes. But before I could explain, he beat me to it in the team channel. Seems like Arav's endpoint didn't handle that case. We might need to rework that logic. I stared at the message. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. I typed up a response, deleted it, typed it again, deleted again. Then I just closed the chat and walked outside for air. I didn't want to believe it, but this wasn't just carelessness anymore. It was targeted, strategic. In the days that followed, things got worse. I stopped getting task assignments. My access to certain dev tools was quietly revoked. A product spec I was leading got reassigned without any explanation. I'd walk into the office and feel like a ghost. I brought it up with Rishi once, casually over lunch. Hey, I've been noticing some changes in responsibilities lately, just wondering if there's a shift I should be aware of. He smiled, that polished, rehearsed smile of his. Oh, nothing major. We're just trying to decentralize things, avoid bottlenecks, you know. Bottlenecks? I nodded and finished my coffee in silence. But I knew then this wasn't about decentralization. This was about removing me. And they were doing it slowly, carefully, like a silent surgery, one cut at a time. It happened on a Thursday. I had barely stepped into the office when I got a calendar invite. HR check-in 10:00 a.m. mandatory. No context, no subject line, just a cold meeting room on the second floor that nobody liked using because the walls were too thin. I sat down across from Priya, the HR manager, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Her laptop was already open. Beside her sat Rishi, arms crossed, smiling faintly like this was a routine status meeting. But I could feel it. Something was off. My stomach turned cold. Priya cleared her throat. Arav, thanks for coming in. We just wanted to touch base on some recent concerns brought to our attention. Concerns, I asked. She shifted in her seat. Yes. There's been feedback from multiple team members regarding collaboration issues, missed deadlines, and unprofessional behavior during team discussions. I blinked. What discussions? I've barely been included in any. Rishi cut in smoothly. It's not personal, Arav. It's just that we've noticed some resistance to team processes. You've been working very independently, and it's created some confusion about your role. My role, I repeated, trying to keep my voice even. I rebuilt your entire back-end system from scratch. He nodded like he was agreeing with me. And we appreciate the initiative, but this is a team project. No one owns any single piece. That's when I understood. This was the plan. They had set the stage, quietly turned the team against me, took the credit, painted me as the problem, and now they were cutting me out officially. Priya leaned forward. Given the circumstances, we think it's best to part ways. You'll receive a severance package. Details will follow in writing. I stared at them. You're firing me. We're moving in a different direction, Rishi said, like that meant anything. I didn't argue, didn't beg. I just sat there, too numb to speak. My hands were cold. My thoughts were racing, but at the center of it all, there was a strange stillness. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd buried me quietly, tucked away behind NDAs and fake narratives. But what they didn't know, what Rishi never bothered to check, was that Pulse wasn't theirs. It never was. I had built the entire system on my personal Git repo, logged under my name, version controlled, documented, every single line accounted for. I walked out of that meeting humiliated, but not empty-handed. They had cut me out. But they hadn't taken everything. Not yet. The walk home that day felt longer than usual. The city buzzed around me, cars honking, footsteps on concrete, life moving on like nothing had changed. But inside I felt hollow, like something had been ripped out of me and replaced with silence. I didn't call anyone, I didn't even check my phone. I just went home, sat on the floor of my apartment and stared at the wall. Everything I'd built, gone just like that. The first wave was shame. What would people think? That I'd been fired, that I wasn't good enough. The second wave was anger. They used me, took everything I gave, everything I worked for, and painted me as a liability, like I was some rogue coder who couldn't play nice with others. But the third wave, that one was quiet. It was focus. I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. My hands shook slightly as I typed in the credentials to my private GitHub account. The familiar green squares greeted me, months of commits, version after version of Pulse. Every module, every script, every optimization logged with a timestamp and my name stamped at the top. I clicked through the folders, not just code, but notes, architecture diagrams, API docs, test coverage reports. I had built all of this outside company hours using my own machine licensed under my own developer account. I had done it partly to protect my work, but mostly, I did it because I never trusted anyone to take care of it the way I did. I clicked on the repo's license file. MIT license. Author Arev Verma. It was all legal, all mine. And that's when something shifted inside me. The shame lifted, the anger focused. They hadn't taken everything, they couldn't. They fired me thinking I'd walk away with nothing. But they didn't know I still had the blueprint. The next few days were quiet. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, not yet. I just organized everything, folders, backups, screenshots of Slack conversations, commit logs, email threads, Jira tickets with my name on resolved features. I wasn't rushing into revenge. I was building a case. Not just a legal one, but a moral one. Because I didn't want to just prove I wrote the code. I wanted to remind them who they tried to erase. The first morning after getting fired was strange. No alarm, no emails, no pressure, just quiet. But beneath that silence was something I hadn't felt in weeks: freedom. I got out of bed, showered, made coffee, and sat at my desk. Not out of habit, out of hunger. The kind of hunger that only comes when something inside you finally wakes up. For the first time in months, I wasn't answering to anyone. No watered-down product roadmaps. No last-minute pivots. Just me, my code, and the truth. I started reviewing everything I had, organizing my documentation, cleaning up code bases, refactoring Pulse for public release. I stripped out any dependencies tied to Viron Labs and began preparing a polished, open-source version. Not out of spite, but because it deserved to live beyond them. This framework was never about money or recognition. It was about doing things right, about building something clean, efficient, and meaningful. And if they didn't want it under my name, the world would take it under mine instead. Still, part of me hesitated. What if they came after me legally? What if they tried to twist the story and make me look like I stole from them? I spent hours double-checking everything. I had logs of every commit, email timestamps proving the project began before I joined their team, messages showing Rishi had no hand in writing a single function. Everything backed me up. But I knew that wasn't enough. Perception was power, so I decided to shape my own. I created a blog post, simple, clean, honest, titled, "The Framework They Forgot to Credit." I told my story, not as a victim, but as a builder. I wrote about Pulse, how I created it, why I built it, how it grew, and how it was used by a team that chose convenience over character. I didn't name names, I didn't accuse, I didn't need to. The code spoke for itself. At the end of the post, I added a link. Introducing Pulse, the open-source backend framework for modern SaaS builders. I clicked publish. It was out there now. Within hours, the post started gaining traction. Likes, shares, comments from devs asking questions, digging into the repo, offering support. One comment stood out. "This is the cleanest backend architecture I've seen in years. How is this not a commercial product?" I smiled. I wasn't just recovering. I was rising. And they had no idea what was coming next. By the end of the week, my inbox was flooded. Startups, solo devs, even mid-sized tech companies were reaching out. Most were just thanking me, appreciating the clean structure of Pulse, asking how they could contribute. But a few emails stood out. CTOs offering consulting gigs, founders asking if I'd consider turning Pulse into a product, investors curious about where it could go. It felt surreal. Just days ago, I was being shown the door like I was some liability. Now people were quoting my code back to me, treating me like I was someone worth listening to. I tried to stay grounded. I knew how hype worked, here today, gone tomorrow, but this didn't feel like hype. This felt like recognition. One morning, I woke up to a DM from a well-known developer on Twitter. He'd read the blog and wanted to feature Pulse in his weekly newsletter. Clean, modular backend frameworks are rare, he wrote. Yours feels like it was designed by someone who's been through the fire. He wasn't wrong. But that fire had a name. And it wasn't done burning. 2 days later, I got a message from someone who still worked at Viron Labs. Hey man, just saw your blog. People here are freaking out. Rishi's been in meetings all day. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because the next message came from Rishi himself. Hey Arav, just wanted to reach out and clear the air. I think there's been some miscommunication lately. I stared at the screen for a while. My hands didn't even move. He hadn't written to apologize. He wasn't admitting anything. He was just trying to control the damage. I didn't reply. Instead, I watched as Pulse hit the front page of Hacker News. Comments poured in, real developers dissecting my code, praising its simplicity and scalability. A few had already forked it and were building on top of it. One even contributed a plugin I'd been thinking of creating myself. I felt proud, not the arrogant kind of pride, the quiet kind, the kind that comes when you know your work stands on its own. People weren't just downloading my code. They were trusting it. I wasn't the difficult developer anymore. I was the guy who built the framework that everyone else tried to take credit for. And the industry had started listening. 2 weeks after I published the blog, the emails from Viron stopped being polite. The first few had tried to sugarcoat it, offering clarity meetings and mutual understanding. I ignored them. I had nothing left to explain. Then came the legal threat. A formal letter dropped into my inbox by some mid-tier law firm they'd hired. It was worded carefully, but the intent was clear. Take down the blog, unpublish Pulse, or face intellectual property consequences. I read it 3 times, printed it, then slid it into a drawer. They were bluffing. They had to be. I'd already done my homework. My code was mine, my license was airtight, and every timestamp proved it. If anything, I had grounds to sue them for false termination and misrepresentation. But I didn't want to go to war. I just wanted to build in peace. Still, I couldn't stay silent. So I wrote a follow-up post. This time, I didn't hold back names. When silence becomes theft, the truth behind Pulse. I laid it all out. My role at Viron, the timeline, screenshots of commit logs, Slack conversations where I was sidelined. Email threads confirming Pulse started before my contract. I even attached parts of their investor pitch deck, slides that featured Pulse word for word without ever mentioning me. And then I dropped the hammer, a public commit history showing every contribution tied directly to my personal account. The post went viral within hours. Tech blogs picked it up, influencers reposted it, LinkedIn exploded. I was getting tagged in threads with thousands of likes. One tweet read, "If this guy doesn't end up on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, the system is broken." But the real moment came 2 days later. I got a call from one of Viron's own investors. He wasn't angry, he was embarrassed. He told me we were sold a lie. I reviewed the demo again, it's your work. You should have been in that meeting, not behind it. Turns out more than one investor had pulled out after seeing the blog. Their trust in Viron was crumbling. Their credibility was in free fall. And Rishi, he went silent. No more DMs, no more legal letters. Just gone. That night I sat at my desk and looked at the Pulse repo. Thousands of stars, dozens of contributors, forks, branches, activity buzzing around the clock. They tried to erase me. Instead, they exposed themselves. The calls stopped, the emails dried up, and just like that, Viron vanished from my life. Not from the internet, though. Their reputation took a hit that no PR team could spin. Within a month, their CTO resigned. A few team members reached out privately, some to apologize, some to quietly offer support, and one to ask if I was hiring. I wasn't looking for revenge either. That wasn't the point. I just wanted the truth to breathe. I got a message from Priya, the HR manager who'd been in the room when they fired me. It was short, 2 lines. "I'm sorry, Arev, I didn't know the full picture. I should have asked more questions." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. The past wasn't something I wanted to relive, but I wasn't going to bury it either. It had shaped me, burned me, tempered me. And now it was behind me. Meanwhile, Pulse kept growing. A small team of devs reached out offering to maintain forks and suggest features. We set up a Slack channel, then a Discord server. Eventually, a Pulse dev website launched with full documentation, tutorials, and integrations. It was more alive than ever, not just a project, but a movement. One evening, as I walked past my old office building, I stopped across the street. The lights were on. Someone was still working late. Probably another dev like me, chasing deadlines that weren't theirs, building things for people who would never say thank you. I felt something strange in my chest. Not bitterness. Not pride. Just peace. They tried to take what I built. They tried to cut me out. But what they didn't understand was this: code isn't just syntax, it's soul, it's intention. And when you write with integrity, that doesn't disappear just because someone tries to rename the files. Justice didn't come in a courtroom. It came quietly, in every line of code with my name on it, in every dev who starred the repo, in every investor who walked away from their lies. I didn't need to shout. The work had spoken, and it was louder than anything they could say. It's funny how something as small as a semicolon can change everything. I remember sitting in my apartment the night I finalized the original version of Pulse. That last line of code felt like a heartbeat, a small, simple mark, but it closed something, locked it in, made it real. Now, months later, I sat at the same desk, but everything was different. Pulse had evolved, so had I. I wasn't just the guy who'd been wronged anymore. I was the builder, the writer of his own story, line by line, function by function, and I was still writing. A new version of Pulse was in beta now, more modular, faster, cleaner. Dozens of contributors from all over the world were helping shape it. Someone even started a UI layer on top of it. Another dev turned it into a plugin-ready toolkit. I didn't expect any of it. I didn't control any of it. But that's what made it beautiful. It had outgrown me, and yet it was still mine. One morning, I got an invitation to speak at a dev conference. Not a flashy one. A quiet, respected event. They wanted me to talk about open source integrity, about what it means to build honestly in a world where everyone's trying to take shortcuts. I almost declined. But then I remembered the version of me who sat in that HR room, hearing words like misalignment and team fit, as my work was erased in front of me. He deserved to be heard. So I said yes. When the day came, I stood in front of the audience, nervous at first. But the moment I started talking about Pulse, why I built it, how it was taken, how it came back to life, something shifted. People weren't just nodding, they were listening. I ended my talk with one sentence. They tried to take my name off the code, so I made sure the code carried my name farther than they ever could. Applause rose, not loud, but warm. Real. Afterward, a young dev came up to me. He looked barely out of college, nervous, excited. "Your story," he said, "it made me want to build something on my own." I smiled. That's all I ever wanted. Not revenge, not validation. Just the space to create something real and have it matter. As I walked off the stage and out into the cool evening air, I realized something. The last line of code was never the end. It was just the beginning.